Hello, my name's Talon, registered dietitian nutritionist in the Tacoma, Washington area. Today we're making an amazing and delicious vegan recipe, a quinoa taco bowl. Our key ingredient for this recipe is quinoa. Quinoa is often thought of as a grain, but it's actually a grass. So today I'm using a tri-colored quinoa. It's important that you rinse your quinoa first. Many people skip this step, and quinoa has a bitter protective coating on the outside that can affect the flavor of your meal. So if you have a sieve or a strainer, that works best. If not, you can simply pour your quinoa into a bowl, a deep bowl, give it a good rinse with your hands, and you are all set. Our other ingredients are as follows. Your lettuce of choice. I'm using red leaf lettuce today. Romaine or green leaf lettuce would also work. 2 bunches of cilantro, cherry tomatoes, green onion, avocado, corn. You can use frozen and have it unthawed, or you can use canned, not packed in salt, black beans. Any bean will work, but when I think a taco bowl, I think black beans. I think pinto beans would also be a good option. When you get your canned beans, go ahead and wipe off the top of the can to remove any dust. And then drain and rinse your black beans. We will be garnishing our taco bowl with some fresh lime juice and a variety of spices. Chili powder, crushed red pepper, cayenne powder, and ground cumin, olive oil, and a vinegar of your choice. I'm using apple cider vinegar today. Garlic, and of course, salt to taste. After you've rinsed your quinoa, our first step is to cook it. So I have 1.5 cups of quinoa with 3 cups of water. You can also use a low sodium vegetable stock to give it an extra boost of flavor. We're gonna cook this on medium to high heat to bring the water to a boil, and then we'll turn it down on low to let it simmer for about 5 minutes. Step 2 is just to prepare our vegetables. You can use whichever vegetables you'd like. Onions, peppers, jalapeno, radish. These would all work really nicely. So our goal is just to get everything chopped by the time our quinoa is done. You can chop your tomatoes in halves if you want to have a bigger bite, or you can chop them in quarters if you want a slightly smaller bite. You can decide to use the whites or to get rid of the whites if the taste is too strong, but I like the whites. These are fresh from my garden, so you can see there's a little bit of dirt still here. The thing with vegetarian diets is many people believe it takes way more prep than non-vegetarian meals. It's not necessarily true. In this recipe, our quinoa takes 5 to 10 minutes to cook, depending on how much quinoa is in the pot. During that time, during that 5 to 10 minutes, you can chop all of your vegetables. If you want to make it less labor intensive, you can buy some of your vegetables pre-chopped. You can buy some of your vegetables pre-washed, and it will simplify and expedite the process. A lot of our cilantro will be used for our dressing. So I'm gonna take about 1/3 of this bunch, and we're gonna top our salad bowl with just that amount. Our cilantro is washed, and I'm going to roll it up into a ball. That way we can mince it up nicely. A lot of people ask me about these cilantro stems, and I like to leave a good chunk of them in my recipes because I believe that they add a lot of flavor. So I'll cut off maybe the bottom 2/3. I'm gonna keep the rest. The key to easy vegetarian cooking is having a sharp knife. This guy's actually a little bit dull, and when you have a dull knife, it takes you longer to chop things because you often have to go back and re-chop. So to save yourself some time and some effort, make sure you either invest in a really great knife or you buy a knife sharpener and you can sharpen them yourselves throughout your time cooking. Using the back of the knife will help preserve its sharpness. Now we're going to make our dressing for the actual vegetable and bean mixture. We'll start with some limes. Our goal is to get 1/3 cup of lime juice. So to get maximum juiciness, I'm going to press down on the lime firmly, release all of those juices from the skin. Oh, we saw it ooze out. That's how juicy that lime is. I'm just going to squeeze it over my hand, prevent any seeds. Okay, I hear the water bubbling and boiling. It's time to turn it down to simmer. You can open the lid just a little bit to let some of the heat simmer out. All right, so for my limes, it took me about 1.5 large limes to get 1/3 cup juice. It really depends on how juicy your lime is. Add it to my jar. We're gonna add some spices to our lime juice. 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne powder. It will be spicy. 1/2 teaspoon of cumin. And then we're doing a whole teaspoon of chili powder. Give it a good mix. Now we're going to add everything together and combine it with our dressing. I love looking at these colors. One of my favorite reasons for eating a lot of vegetarian meals is because of how beautiful it is. Anytime you get more than 3 colors together, the item just pops. It's visually appealing, and we know we eat with our eyes. So it's really important that you consider the colors that are on your plate so that you can be more excited to try some foods that might be a little new to you. Take a couple leaves of whatever lettuce you have, and we're going to slice those up into ribbons. If you want to make this more of a salad, you can cut up your entire lettuce head. So I'm going to cut up the little bottoms. Gave it a good rinse already, so it's nice and clean. I'll cut it lengthwise a couple times. And then I'll give it a coarse chop in the opposite direction. It's time to make our cilantro lime vinaigrette. Our quinoa is almost done. I'll chop up my garlic. You can use 1 to 2 cloves. It just depends on how big your garlic cloves are, and of course, how much you love garlic. And if you've watched any of my cooking videos, you know I'm a fan of garlic, so I will be using 2 cloves. You may have also seen my technique for cutting garlic. Typically, I slice it lengthwise, and then I slice it in the opposite direction to get these perfectly minced pieces and to dispose of or discard of the nub. But today, our dressing, we're actually going to blend it because of the amount of cilantro that's in it. So there actually isn't a need to mince up our garlic. You can go ahead, cut off the little nub, throw it in your jar or directly in your blender if it's close by, and you're good. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons of our vinegar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of red crushed pepper, and 1/2 cup of olive oil. I love that sound. Of course, we'll need our cilantro. This has already been washed. Again, I'll cut off the bottom 2/3 of the stems, give it a coarse chop, but like I said, it's gonna go in the blender, so we don't need to worry about dicing it up really finely. Once you add everything to your blender and you give it a blend for about 2 minutes, you can gauge to see the consistency. And if you want to add some water, start with using 1/4 cup, and then you can add up in increments of maybe 1/8 cup and see if the consistency is what you'd like it to be. Voila, nice and blended. I'm gonna pour it back into our jar. I like to make a lot of my dressings in jars because you're gonna wanna store it in a jar anyways. So you're minimizing the amount of bowls you're using. I did end up adding about 1/2 cup of water in mine, and then I thought maybe it's a little bit too watery, so I went back and added just a couple more sprigs of cilantro, and it worked out well. You will notice that this is a little bit on the saltier side, and that's okay because we didn't salt our quinoa. And so once we pour this over everything, the little bit of saltiness that's in this dressing is gonna work really well to enhance the flavors of everything mixed in. I have my avocado here, and we're using this as a topping. The tricky part with avocados is many times people find that they're either under or overripe. So to pick out a good avocado, you wanna hold it in your hand and feel that it's firm, but has a little bit of a give. And you should also tell that the skin is more on the brown side versus the green side. Then how we cut into the avocado is to take our knife, and then we're gonna go all the way around. And what we're doing is we're gonna create 2 halves where the pit's in the middle. We give it a nice twist, and now our avocado comes apart perfectly. There's no browning or blackening or mold growing, so it's clearly not overripe. And it's got a variation of color between greens here, which means it's not underripe. So I like avocado, I'm gonna use it. I like to slice my avocado lengthwise. And then cross-hatch it to make cubes. Then you can take a spoon and simply scoop out the innards. And now we have a plethora of nicely cubed avocado. You can keep the pit in your avocado and put the skin back on it as a good preservation technique. Our quinoa is done. I can tell because there's no more water visible. It's like tripled in size, and I see a lot of these curly little spirals, and that's the innard part of the quinoa, and when it pops out, it means your quinoa is ready to go. You don't want to take a spoon to the quinoa and give it a stir because it's going to make it mushy, so we're going to treat it just like rice. Take a fork and gently fluff it up. It shouldn't be hard and it shouldn't be mushy. If it is mushy, you might have used too much water. And if it's hard, you didn't use enough water. Or it's undercooked. I might let it cool down a little bit so that when I incorporate it with all of our vegetables, it's not overly hot. Combine all the ingredients and gently mix it together. Our recipe's done. It's just time to assemble and enjoy. I'm gonna line my bowl with some lettuce here. And then add several large scoops on top. I'd say about a half a cup of lettuce to a cup of quinoa mixture is a good ratio for a meal. Finally, a couple cubes of my avocado. And of course, we can't forget our cilantro vinaigrette. A nice drizzle. Garnish it with a little bit more cilantro. Voila! Shall we taste it? I think we shall. This is really good. Like I said, the saltiness of the dressing is not too much because it's really gonna balance out the fact that we didn't salt our quinoa. It's not as spicy as I thought. So if you are a lover of spice, go ahead and bump up the spice a bit. If you're not a lover of spice, maybe reduce it by half, but it really doesn't have that much heat. I like the texture that the tomatoes add. Because I love crunch, I think next time I will add some pepper or some red onion, or maybe even some radish. But there you have it, friends. A lovely, quick vegetarian dish packed with protein, lots of color. I hope you enjoy.